How do we find solutions to the challenges facing American education today? We'll explore this issue with Mr. Charles Adams, one of the many stars from the thought-provoking film Waiting for Superman, in this edition of The Chat Room. Welcome to The Chat Room. I'm Frank O'Gara, your host today. With me in the studio is Mr. Charles Adams from the Seed School, a public charter school in Washington, D.C. As head of school, Mr. Adams brings a collaborative, student-centered approach and a proven ability to dramatically improving school achievement. For over a decade, our guest has worked in various capacities with urban students and communities in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. He's also an alumnus of the New Leaders for New Schools Principals Training Program, the University of Pennsylvania, the City University of New York, and Howard University School of Law. He is a strong voice in the national education debate. Welcome, Mr. Adams.
Thanks for having me.
May I call you Charles?
Sure.
Okay. It's really good to have you here, okay? You went going from the classroom, okay, to Hollywood stardom recently in Waiting for Superman, a big jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big jump. I wouldn't consider it stardom. I think the young people are the stars.
Absolutely, okay. What was your experience like, though, in the film?
Well, you know, I think it's two things happened. One was I was just at work doing what I believe in and what I love, and Davis Guggenheim and crew came through for a number of days over many months and followed us around. And I think that was just an experience personally, but professionally, it was inspiring to see someone grab on to an issue that's near and dear to my heart and that I know is the lever that we need to pull for our country to be more successful and for our students to succeed. So to have the work in urban education reform be put on a platform, a national visual platform via the documentary, was huge.
And you're very passionate about it. What impact do you think the film will have on this whole national debate about public education?
I think the film, even in its title, Waiting for Superman, is not gently but seriously getting us all to think about what are we waiting for? Why don't all of our schools produce the same results? And why aren't all of our students given access to quality educational opportunities? And so I think the film is going to, I think there are folks like yourself and I who are aware of the educational landscape, and we know of many of the issues. It's going to remind us of those issues if our children have already graduated from high school or didn't go to public school. It's going to inspire those who are unaware of the issues and have a layperson's perspective. And I think it's going to push us all to do something different, be it volunteer, be it write our legislative officials, visit a school, tutor, mentor. I think it lays out a number of options at the end of the film, and I don't want to spoil it for any of those of us who haven't seen it, but I think it's timely and I think it's necessary.
What's the takeaway message for people who perhaps aren't in public education? What do you think that message is for people?
I think one of the more interesting parts of the film, Bill Gates is in the film, and he's speaking about our global competition. So I would say even at the most selfish level for an adult, if you want our country to be competitive and remain competitive and produce thinkers and leaders and concerned citizens, then we need to have quality schools. And I think that, to me, is the most direct takeaway from the film, is that everybody should be concerned about the country that has produced us and that we love and that we reside in. And I think he talks about the economics of quality schools, but also just the ethical responsibility we have to take care of all of our children.
Well said, well said. And you're doing exactly that, I think, at the Seed School in Washington, D.C.
That is what we attempt to do on a daily basis.
Let's talk a little bit about the Seed School. And I think for our viewers, they may not really understand what a public charter school is. Can you talk a little bit about what public charter schools do today, and then in particular what the Seed School does?
Sure. Public charter schools are similar to public district schools. And unfortunately, there is a conversation in the newspaper and amongst politicians where they say charter schools versus public schools. And that's a myth. We receive the same funding. We are primarily funded by per pupil allocations. So we receive state and federal dollars, serving the same students, often from the same families. The difference between a district school and a charter school is that charter schools are given a certain amount of autonomy, and we can make decisions on the fly that we believe are in the best interest of children. In exchange for that autonomy, we are evaluated and authorized. We're initially authorized and then evaluated every 5, 10, or 15 years, depending on the jurisdiction. And if we do not do what we say we do, what we promised to do in our initial charter, then that charter could be revoked. So there's with that autonomy comes some additional high stakes that, for the most part, lights a fire under us to make sure we do what we say we do.
Absolutely, yeah. And you've got some additional challenges because you're also a boarding school, aren't you?
Right, so SEED is a charter school, and we operate just like I described, but we're also a 5-day-a-week public boarding school. And our young people come to us every Sunday evening, so imagine that. Packing up their luggage and getting their uniforms ready for the week with their homework and what have you, and joining us Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. And they stay with us for 120 hours and they leave us Friday afternoon.
Right, not unfamiliar to us. We've had boarding schools, 5-day schools in the past as well, in some of the places that we've served. And the kids, the entry level for your students is at grade
6. All of our students come in at 6th grade. That was an adjustment we made over the last 2 years due to some of the changes in the District of Columbia educational and middle school landscape, but our students come in 6th grade, and that's by design. Our founders wanted us to have an opportunity to introduce this boarding concept to both families and students, and then spend the next 6-7 years getting them prepared for college and beyond.
And how's it working out?
I think it's working out well. I believe there are only 2 types of schools. They're improving schools or declining schools, and I know which one we are. We're an improving school, and we're doing well. We've been in existence since 1998. We've produced a graduating class every year since 2004. 96% of our graduates have been accepted to one or more colleges and universities, and within 12 to 18 months, another above 90% of them enroll in one of those colleges and universities.
That's terrific. And your school and your work has been of interest to us because one of our mantras is also continuous improvement. Okay?
Correct.
And that's the train that we're on and the train that continues to move. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the issues that are part of the national debate that I've heard you refer to in the past. And I want to begin first with transitions. You talked about the transition those kids make at 6th grade. How important is transition in helping our students to be part of a school community? What is it that you do special at Seed School to make that happen?
I think from the start, and I think every day following that, we have to set our students up for success. And so I think we have to be crystal clear about our expectations, what we demand of students and parents, and also have an open ear to hear their feedback coming from students and parents. So the first thing that we do with any 6th grader or rising 6th grader who applies to the Seed School of Washington, D.C. And is accepted, or they're not even accepted because we're a public charter school, but that their ball is physically pulled from a bingo roll that we...
it's a lottery
like the lottery. We invite them to a student orientation, a new student orientation. That actually happens at the end of June after our seniors graduate and before the summer school starts. So these students come and they stay with us for a full week on campus and they board. We have programming for their parents. We actually take them to a college campus. We assess them. I wouldn't say we test them. We see where they are because it's our responsibility to meet them where they are. So by the time those students return in the fall, we already know their reading level. We know their mathematical ability. We know if they, for instance, were extremely homesick for that week. We know if they have a sibling that they miss. We know if mom or dad or grandmom or aunt or uncle really miss them, and we could prepare for that. So we could fulfill the part of our mission of preparing them academically and socially for college and life beyond, and I think that orientation is key. So they get a glimpse, and being we're a small school, 330 students, we understand and recognize that we're not for everybody, but we give families the opportunity to test us out. And luckily for us that there's enough interest in our school that we have a wait list, so if that doesn't work for Frank or Charles in that instance, there are other students who are very interested in joining us later on.
Oh, that's great. And I think there are a lot of parallels with our school system because our schools, by virtue of the fact that they're located so far away, become a very special place for our families. And being affected by deployment and frequent transitions, our schools tend to become places that really are central to the stability in that child's life. Okay? And so getting to know the whole student, as you describe, is an important facet for us as well. You mentioned expectations. Expectations not only for students, but for your teachers, for parents.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about those and what that means at Seed School?
Sure. So I think expectations are key. Personally, if I look at my life in terms of the time I spent in school as well as professionally, I think that what someone expected of me is actually what drove me to get to the next level. So we have extremely high expectations for our students. They know from that initial orientation in June as a rising 6th grader, before they're actually even one of our students, they are a candidate for our school, so to say, that they recognize that college is the goal. And it's not just acceptance to college, it's acceptance to entering, matriculating at, and then graduating from. And for us to say that out loud and be crystal clear about it and say it repeatedly and mean it, we also have to have a similar conversation with the parents and the families. Unfortunately, the community that we serve is overlooked and underrepresented for the most part, the Seed School of DC as well as the Seed School in Baltimore, Maryland. And so we're often introducing that concept not only to the children, but also to the family. I don't think that you have to be middle class to have middle class values, but we have to walk through what that looks like and feels like. And so our expectations for the families and the students are high, and we're very clear. And the one beautiful thing I think about the work that we do is that when we meet families, they all want the best for their child. I think parents send their best kid to school for us every Sunday evening, but for most schools every day. And so they want us to do right by their child. So those expectations are set. We expect hard work from the students. We definitely do. We expect consistency. And then for the adults that are responsible for our young people, be it teachers, we have life skills counselors who are the teachers' counterparts in our boarding program. We expect them to keep the child's learning and safety and emotional well-being and social development as the constant. And the variables we should be the variables. How we flex, how we differentiate, how flexible we are, what we do to make sure that those students are growing and learning, that's our responsibility professionally. And so those high expectations exist, and I think all well-functioning organizations, be they private, public, families, communities, religious organizations that are doing well by their constituency have extremely high expectations, and those expectations don't waver.
For sure, for sure. Let's talk about some other issues that are certainly of interest to you and to us. Equity and access.
Definitely. I think all children, regardless of where they're born, what they look like, what their family may be doing, their income level, deserve a quality education. And we say quality education, and it's almost become like this pat line that people say, I think that all children can learn and do so at high levels. But the difference is where are we actually doing it? And I think the Seed School, and I'm sure your schools, and a number of schools throughout the country, many of them profiled in the movie Waiting for Superman, are doing that and have proven results that it does not matter who you are and where you're from, that if we believe that you can do it and that you work hard and the expectations are high, that children can succeed. And I ask our students at school to surprise me every day, to surprise me in a good way. Do something that I wouldn't expect you to do. Do something that you wouldn't expect yourself to do. Is it a new author? Is it a mathematical analysis or scientific lab? What is it that is sparking you and getting you to improve? And I think that it's unfair for us to, as adults, to figure out or try to decide or others to figure out which communities deserve the best schools and which ones don't. I mean, just imagine if parents didn't have to sit in a lottery for their child to get a good school, and every child in every neighborhood could go to any school, the closest one or the furthest one. And we would, in charter schools, the debate between charter schools and district schools wouldn't exist if all of the schools were really strong. And I think equity and access is important. So equity, that the schools are the same and they're on par at an excellent level. Access, that once those schools exist, and they don't yet nationally, but once they do, that everyone can actually get to those schools and get in those schools. And they're not all necessarily magnet schools. I think there's a place for thematically focused schools, but I think that all just general schools need to be really solid. And I'm glad that the Seed School, via the movie and or just the daily work that we do, is a part of this conversation nationally.
What about access and equity within the school too? Equity and access to opportunities for all kids within the school.
Sure. So we have a number of things that I think are pretty unique at Seed. We operate around a couple of themes. We call them the 3 E's. So excellence, effort, and exposure. And just to answer this question, exposure, we actually have a full-time staff member who's responsible for external opportunities. So what is it that we can add? What flavor and additional experiences and opportunities can we add to a student's life? So we have students who have traveled. This would be of interest to you all. I think every summer we have over 25 students that are in 10 different countries doing something during the summer. So that access, right? Like, how do we make their experience unique, and how do we stay true to what our mission is? And we also want to make sure that our students are supported at all levels. So we have built-in scaffolds for academic support. So our middle school students every day have 45 minutes of temporary homogeneous grouping that supports what they do. So if Frank is great in math and Charles isn't, but we're in the same math class, we don't split them up and put them on different tracks or paths that will never cross once again. They stay in there and follow the concepts, and they're supported externally. Our boarding program does the same thing in terms of social skills and development, and we have a very robust tutoring program that I'm actually quite proud of this year that is supporting students, so we're allowed to push them without lowering the expectations, but to guarantee that they get the supports that they need.
Sure. What about foreign language? Okay, is it a part of the curriculum?
We do have Spanish 1, 2, and 3. We have a full-time visual arts teacher. We have a full-time vocal music teacher. We have well-outfitted science labs. We have 2 computer labs in the academic building. We have about 3 or 4 mobile laptop carts, working our best to outfit the whole campus with Wi-Fi and trying to stay abreast of what's happening in the world and stay competitive. We want our schools to reflect the external world as well, the real world, as we often say to students. So we have leveled classroom libraries within all of our English classes as well as in social studies and science classes.
Now you touched upon technology. What role does technology play at Seed School, and what do you think it should play in education?
I think I learned of a term through the professional literature called digital natives. And so if you have young people who are 12, we have basically 11-year-old students to maybe 18, 19 years old. They have been using email probably their whole life, and now they're texting, and they're
onto other things,
Bluetooth and a number of other things. So I think we have to honor that. We have to respect that that's their technology. It's kind of like rock and roll when someone was growing up, or hip hop or some other music where the parents looked at it from a distance and didn't think it was one, helpful, healthy, or going to be around, and now all of those art forms are here. And I think technology has become a tool that we have to respect and recognize. So for instance, many of our upper school students now, they submit the majority of their assignments via email, or they take assessments that they could take at any time from a web-based platform. We have a number of tutorial programs that are web-based. We're looking at some assessments. I know that Terra Nova is an assessment, but we're also looking at NWA's MAP assessment, which will allow students to figure out where they are on a regular basis via technology. So we're trying to respect it. We have a very clear policy around cell phones. Middle school students, of course, do not need them and cannot have them. Upper school students, we're not going to have that battle. We have more important things to do, like to make sure they're prepared for college. So we allow them to have phones at set times and how they use them. I think we have to respect it and integrate it, and we're doing a better job at that.
Now, often when we talk about the 21st century, a lot of people associate that solely with technology, but 21st century skills in schools goes far beyond technology.
Correct.
What does it look like at the Seed School?
We've recently done some research, and we've discovered, and I think a lot of schools in our position are doing the same thing, that there are some things that allow and encourage folks to be successful that schools don't usually focus on. So for instance, the students that we serve, primarily first-generation college-bound students, there's a value in, and we have to make sure that we allow this to grow in persistence, in time management, self-advocacy, grit, the ability to fail forward, utilization of resources. So when they get to college, we don't want to carry them to the finish line. When they get to college, we want to make sure they get on campus and they know, okay, if I'm struggling, I can go get a tutor here, right? So what we're trying to do is build, at developmentally appropriate levels, build those skills in our students. So our 6th graders, we actually may walk with you from the dorm to the cafeteria. This is a very simple example, but our 12th graders, we're not going to do that. And no one needs to wake you up. No one needs to remind you. You have the syllabus, and we've done some things structurally in terms, and I know you're an educator, so for instance, our upper school, our 10th through 12th graders, they have a block schedule. So A, B day, every other day they have a different class. That demands some responsibility and paying particular attention to your schedule. They have 93-minute class periods, which are much like the college setting. We don't do that with our middle school students because they're not yet ready for that. But trying to make sure that we do things and we just don't talk about 21st century skills. I also think that our students need to have the ability to code switch, that they have to speak a number of languages, and I'm not speaking solely in terms of linguistically. Like, they have to be able to operate and have a conversation like you and I are having, but also have a conversation in their neighborhood and a conversation wherever they may find themselves, and be able to translate their learning and their growth in various settings, and I think that's important.
That's pretty sophisticated too. Yeah.
And necessary.
Yeah, necessary, absolutely. How about gender? Are you doing anything different with gender grouping at Seed School, and does it make a difference?
I think it makes a difference. I think that we do something different in the middle school. Our middle school classes are gender-based, so we have teachers who teach all boys literacy or mathematics classes, and the same thing with our young ladies. And I think it's important just developmentally for any child. I think that young men can easily become embarrassed with young ladies in the classroom, and then we know the research behind how young ladies feel about science and mathematics in the STEM area, and if they are separated, they can get interested in it, and then once they're interested in it, we believe by the time they're freshmen that they're able to come back together and have a productive classroom environment. They're not always, of course the dorms are gender-based, but they have dinner and they have lunch, and there are a number of activities and clubs that are co-ed, but we do split them purposefully, and especially with our young men. Our young men start at the seed school oftentimes a number of grade levels behind, and unfortunately in the District of Columbia, like many other urban environments, the young men are suffering the most educationally. So we like to pull them away from the co-ed environment and really drill down and make sure that they get the skills that they need to be successful as they continue through our school.
Now, what kind of argument do you get from the young men?
We actually don't get much. I mean, I think the 11-year-olds in 6th grade, the 12-year-olds and 12 and 13-year-olds in 7th grade, I think when they get to 8th grade, they start itching to have some more interaction with their female counterparts. But the good thing and the beauty of it, Frank, is that when they're learning, that builds a confidence and that builds a certain calm that many of them don't arrive with when we meet them. And I think that they could put some of the other social issues on the back burner for a minute. You know, they love it when we have a dance or some activity that's social. But I think that they also appreciate that their reading levels are increasing and that they're growing. And
a number of school districts are working similar kinds of grouping. Do you think that'll grow, that movement?
I think like I can give the example that I've used before. I have a friend who started an all-boys middle school in New York City. And you know, one example, and I was on his planning committee, one example I think that we use is, it's like an art school isn't for everybody, right? Duke Ellington's a great school here in the District of Columbia Public School. It's an arts-based school, but it's not for everybody. But there are some students who thrive in that environment. I think that a single-gender school, I went to a single-gender high school. I don't think that's for everybody. I know that it helped me focus. But I think that our students and our families, especially the communities that have not historically had options, they need those options. So it would be great to say you can go to this district school, that's just a regular traditional school, you can go to this charter school, you can go to this arts-based school, you can go to this STEM school, you can go to this single-gender school. And then that's how parents have the opportunity to match up their child and their child's needs with the educational options that are out there.
And so many of your parents, then, you're saying, are choosing that option when they apply to go to a seed school as well?
Definitely. I think they've done their research. I think they've figured out what works for them. I mean, we find we have a number of siblings that attend. Families are, I believe, quite astute and smart, and they figure out what works best for them. And I appreciate it because then we have a partnership that's meaningful and long-lasting.
Now, you mentioned STEM a couple of times, and for our viewers, can you explain the acronym STEM, and then what does it mean at Seed School?
Sure. So that's science, technology, and engineering, and mathematics. I think it's critically important that's the future in many ways if you look at it in terms of technology. And so what do? We just added an AP biology class. Next year we're adding an AP calculus class. In order for us to have those classes, we have to do some backwards mapping and move from 12th grade down to 6th grade. So that pushes our mathematics curriculum forward, that pushes our science curriculum forward. And we want our students to be prepared. I know for a fact in science and engineering, especially amongst, if you just look at the PhDs in the country, there is a lack of African Americans, and we are disproportionately low in regards to our percentage of the population in those fields. And if we want to build communities that are successful and not have our students attend the seed school and then move out of their home community, be it locally or even regionally or even internationally, we want to make sure that they're prepared. We need to have the supports there. We have a 21st Century Community Learning Center grant with the federal government. It's a 5-year grant. We partnered with a science organization, so we have the traditional science fair that we've all experienced in, say, 8th grade, but we actually have scientists that look like our students that come from Johns Hopkins and other institutions to support them. And so they can actually, so not only am I interested in science, I could actually look at someone and see myself in doing this and figuring out what careers are behind that, right? Like what's behind that scientific method that you could actually do on a daily basis if that's what really turns you on intellectually.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really critical to success. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about teachers for a minute. We know that teachers are a key ingredient in success in the school. So, what is it that you look for, as a head of school when you're recruiting a teacher? What qualities do you look for in a teacher?
Well, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, I think the first thing is, what are your expectations of young people? And I think you can ask some pretty clear questions to find out how people feel about children. So I think that's key. And then once we have an understanding of how they feel about children, we love to hire folks who have demonstrated some proven success, data-driven success around moving young people from one point to another. The beauty of that, and with our school being a boarding school, is that we do that with teachers, which I think is pretty easy to do. You can say, where did you teach before? Let me speak to your principal. Can you give me an example of your test scores? Are there some anecdotal stories you can tell of how you moved a child, or what did you do when a child struggled and wasn't moving. But being that we're a boarding school, we also have resident advisors who are with us in the mornings and the evenings, and we have life skills counselors. So then that kind of opens up the playing field, and we can say, well, what have you done with a child? And we may get a great soccer coach, we may get someone who ran an after-school program, we may get a grad student. And so we really focus on expectations first, and then we back that up with some proven experience that they've had with success with young people, specifically young people from an urban environment.
And when you talk about data-driven, they'll actually bring the test scores for their classes.
They can, or we can ask, or we can say, I mean, now the world is so transparent via technology that we could say, well, where did you teach? We could look at their resume, and we could actually go find out how that school's been doing and talk to their colleagues and their past supervisors and see if what they state is so true. And we often find that it is. And the other great thing about a school, and I believe some of the media attention that we've garnered recently has been quite helpful, is that people talk. And people want to be in successful organizations and organizations that may not have reached their ultimate goal but are improving day to day. And I believe that's who we are. And so we get a lot of folks who have been told by one of the colleagues who are currently working with us that this is a good place to work, and that you could be successful and you can do what you want to do and feel good about it.
Well, it sounds like a great place to work, and I think your leadership has probably been key.
Thank you.
There's a lot of the talk in the national debate with the Education Summit with Waiting for Superman is kind of a downer in some respects. I mean, people are down on American education and where we are. Is there a message of hope for the future for our schools and for our kids in the movie Waiting for Superman?
I think there is. I think the message actually, and even though we're one of the schools in there, I say this without a hint of ego, I think the message is that there are a number of schools that are already successful working in America, both public schools, district public schools, and charter public schools. And I think that to me, is the high point of the film. If you can find one in there, if you want to look for one and see one, I think that the high point is that there are schools that are already doing it. We're in there, KIPP is in there, a number of other charter schools are in there. And what it's saying is that the schools exist. We have to create more schools like that. And more importantly, I think, and not only create more schools, but also take those best practices and share them. And I think we know everything we need to do to be successful in public education. We just have to decide how we feel about that we haven't already done so.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and sharing your views with our military viewers all over the world. And we congratulate you on your personal success and the success that you're having at the Seed School. I know that you must have some military students that rotate in from time to time with you.
Sure, we do. That's not something that we actually ask, but being that we're in the District of Columbia and a number of our families work for the government and the armed services, be it civilian or military, I'm sure that we have supported a number of your families and students as well.
Well, and we appreciate it. Okay, thank you once again for sharing your views. It's been
Thank
a pleasure to have you here in the chat room.
Thanks a lot, Frank.
You can find more information about our guest today at the URL shown on the screen. Thank you for joining us in this edition of the Chat Room.